Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Mike, can you please call roll?
Ms. Benecki.
Present.
Dr. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Essenplayer. Ms. Hogue. Ms. Hollingworth.
Here.
Ms. Paoli.
Here.
Nicely done, Heather.
Mr. Seidel.
Here.
Vice President Hogarth. President Crooked.
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mike, could you please read the statement concerning open public meetings?
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 12th, 2022, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. A written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were emailed to the Courier Post and the Retrospect newspaper.
Okay, we're going to start with, I think, the highlight of our job, which is student commendations.
Harrington, are you have the music? Harrington? For both of you? All right, come on up. So we're going to start off, we have some South Jersey Band Orchestra Director Association Elementary Honors. So Harrington.
Okay. So these students were nominated by myself based upon what they have shown me in our lessons and in our ensembles. And they were accepted to perform with other schools in South Jersey. It was a one-day event, so they had to prepare the music by themselves with me. And then it was a one-day event where they practiced with these students and then put on a concert with these students, which is a really unique opportunity that these kids get to have. From Central School, those students are not here because they're at a skating party. But we had Henry Grayresh, Aiden Beck, and Brooke Michelle. From Lizzie, I have both of those guys here. I have Keel Chinwala and Landon Kane. Oh, sorry.
There you go.
And then from Tatum, we had Jetson Moon, who's here, and Max King, who is here, as well as Evan Peruse and Josh Devaney, who are not here.
Jackson, at the end.
And Max is right here.
All right, so photo opportunity, families, let's get to them.
Way to go.
Sorry, guys. There you go. Now, Miss Mary. Oops, we almost walked over that.
Yeah, maybe you should just stay here.
Yes. I have 4 students from Elizabeth Haddon who auditioned as part of the New Jersey Elementary Honor Choir. This is students in 4th, 5th, and 6th from around the state who had to audition with other students. There were 100 who auditioned and 60 who were accepted into the program, and they rehearsed and performed in Flemington. And they had an awesome concert with a guest conductor, and I'm really proud of them. I have Catherine Forelli and Teresa Miller, who are here. And the other 2, Catherine Usher, the skating party, and Marcella Mistretta, who could make it.
All right.
There we go.
Congratulations. We also have PT PTA reflection. So PTA puts out a reflection in rescue different hands of the park. I don't know if there's anyone here to present this, so I'll just do it. So, Rachel Peltz, is Rachel here? Rachel's moving on to the next level for a music competition. She's got an original piece of music to go on. William Buckler, is William here? William is moving to the national level in photography. And award of merit goes to Jovan Soldier. Is he here? Okay. So we acknowledge them. We'll make sure they get those. And it's great work by everyone. We're so happy to see the success in the arts and the passion for this. It really means a lot to them. So congratulations, everyone. Well done.
Okay, moving on to the student representatives report. We have Charlie Webb here to report from the high school.
All right, good evening. We just have a few announcements for the month of May. It's hard to believe that we're already thinking about it. The finals are coming up soon, and due to the positive feedback from midterms, we'll be running a similar schedule, except we'll be doing it in reverse order. So starting from 8th period, moving to first period. There'll be 2 tests a day, and the day will end at 1:30 p.m. The high school administered 593 AP tests over the course of May, and there are only 3 more, which is really exciting for us and also Mr. Licata. In regards to the topics discussed at last week's meeting, specifically policy 2240, I was able to gain some feedback from around 40 students, some of whom watched the meeting, some of whom did not. However, the general consensus from those students was that the students trust their teachers with how they choose to address controversial topics in the classroom. Today, the high school enjoyed Wellness Day, which was extremely fun and something that students look forward to every year. The peer leaders do an incredible job organizing the day, and we are grateful for their efforts to make the day so fun. On a similar note, Arts in the Courtyard will be held on June 3rd, and we're looking forward to that as well. The NJ SLA testing is 50% done. The freshmen tested this week on Tuesday and Wednesday, and next week juniors will test on Tuesday and Wednesday as well. Junior prom was a huge success, and it's been great to have our dances back to a very similar format like before COVID. And the dance season will conclude tomorrow night with senior prom, and the promenade will start at 6:30 for anyone interested. As always, I'll conclude with sports. The girls JV 8 will be going to nationals for crew. Spring playoffs have begun, and we're looking forward to a quick and enjoyable end of the year. That's all I have.
Promenade in the courtyard again or back on the
Courtyard. We're back in the courtyard.
Great.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
Great update.
Okay, moving on, we'll have the first of our presentations, the ESSER funds from Dr. Priolo.
Okay, thank you. So what I hope to, well, how about I move over a little bit so people can see me a little better. What I hope to accomplish here is provide the board with an understanding of funds that have been allocated through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, which have been dispersed to school districts across the country in 3 different disbursements. I'm going to be talking about what those allocations were, what has and hasn't been spent, on what it has been spent, and what are our next steps. So there essentially have been 3 allocations, and for ease of understanding this, because the Trump administration called it one thing, the Biden administration called it something else, and then there's a third name. But for simplicity, I'm going to call it ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. This is just the easiest way to frame it. But don't Google that, because then it won't come up. This first slide provides a summary of, it's kind of like the executive summary of all of the information. I do apologize that I stapled the copier on the copy stapler setting was on the wrong side, so it's a little hard to turn. But anyhow, so ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Think of ESSER 1 was kind of the absolute emergency frontline response funding information for schools. It was the first immediate response for technology, sanitation efforts, student needs, and professional development. That was a total of $134,370. That money has entirely been spent. In subsequent slides, I'm going to show you where exactly that money was spent. ESSER 2 was distributed in December of 2020, and there was additional money for closures. It addresses all of the additional, the original CARES Fund information, plus addressing student learning loss, facility improvements to reduce risk and virus exposure, improving indoor air quality. A little north of $500,000. We have spent only about $133,175, and then the ESSER 3, which is the American Rescue Plan. That was an additional $1.3 million, and we haven't spent any of that money yet. And I want to provide some commentary on that. Working in a school system, when these funds first became available, it may not come as a surprise that as soon as that funding was announced, we were inundated with contractors and vendors and gadgets and technologies claiming to do a lot of things that some were substantiated, some were not. I'll give you a quick example. A trend that a lot of school districts jumped on early on was this idea of retrofitting your HVAC systems with bipolar ionization, with the claim that it was going to sanitize the room spaces. And the flyers look good, the presentations look good, and like I said, a lot of surrounding school districts jumped on that concept. We decided to pause on that, and we decided to ask more questions and reach out to experts. In fact, Dr. Jen Natika was very helpful in reaching out to her infectious disease experts. And what we learned was that it's not a proven technology, particularly in schools. So I highlight that because we're trying to take the approach of we have to spend the money where it's needed, but at the same time, we want to make sure we're spending responsibly. Yes, Heather.
Maybe I was looking at them in the wrong order. So ESSER 2, we spent some, we have some money left over.
Correct.
And then what you're calling ESSER 3, which is the CARES.
ESSER 3 is American Rescue Plan.
The one for where it is.
So most of
Around way
them.
over.
It's cut off.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did send it
Got it,
electronically,
got it,
everyone, so
got it.
yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
The screen.
Then that answers my question.
All right, so then the last big picture part of this I want to share that,
Yeah, I don't.
as I said, ESSER 1 was frontline COVID responses. ESSER 2, we are earmarking funds for lavatory renovations throughout the school district, summer instruction, and upgrades to our heating, ventilation, and cooling systems, just not the bipolar ionization. And ESSER 3, also lavatory renovations and learning acceleration. Although I'll talk a little bit more about how some of the next phase planning is going to happen. So the next slides just break down where that money was actually spent. So you can see with CARES, I called it ESSER 1. For learning acceleration, a lot of that went to salaries for staff in supporting the needs of students beyond the contract. Supplies, iPads, Chromebooks, when that first hit in March, we didn't have the entire infrastructure. We knew not all of our families had access. So a lot of that funding went to that, what I'm calling those frontline responses, not to be mistaken with medical funds. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Because the numbers seem kind of low here. I'm assuming that the school district also kicked in for Chromebooks and iPads, that was coming out of our operating budget as well.
Well, we already had, fortunately, we had the foresight to have plans to expand our one-to-one initiative. So that was the real cost. We had a lot of devices. We repurposed a lot of devices. So that, and then there was also a healthy amount of families who had access to their own devices who didn't need our Chromebooks. So the ESSER 2 was broken down into 3 categorical allocations, a general fund, a little under $500,000. Mental health, $45,000, and learning acceleration earmarked at $29,392. So that's how the grants are currently written in the allocations. We do have the ability to make amendments to those when we see that there is a need to do that. Again, this next slide breaks down the how the funding has been allocated thus far.
Sorry, just, Gino, I'm just gonna ask you now, because I didn't want to get too far without me being sure. So, the ESSER 2, they actually, when you get that money, they're kind of allocating what?
No, we write, so they say this is your allocation, then we have to write a grant application to the U.S. Department of Education to say, this is how we think we're going to allocate that. And it is pretty amendable if we want to make revisions to that, if we see the need.
Okay.
All the way up through the end dates. So like 2, we can make adjustments and make further requests all the way through September 30th.
That's a good question.
Usually, yes.
Okay.
They may give you a deadline. They do it for our IDA grants and ESEA grants. Hey, no more amendments past May 15th. And then they even tell you, you have to have all orders by June 30th. And all the funds have to be liquidated by August 31st.
The mental health portion, we have spent approximately $36,000, and you can see how that breakdown is. 2 of those items are on for formal approval this evening from the board. Talked a little bit about it at last week's board meeting, the Care Solace, which is the mental health handoff service that will be available for students, parents, and all of our faculty and staff. Purchase services, our ruler, which is our SEL framework, the CALM app, which we are now beginning the rollout for all of our employees, and then additional professional development. On the learning acceleration piece, a little under $8,000. You can see the breakdowns there. And then what I was calling ESSER 3, which is the American Rescue Plan, that's the area we haven't touched any of that money yet. However, a significant portion of that is being earmarked for the bathroom renovations and for the HVAC upgrades. So none of that work is coming out of our capital budget.
None of that work. I'm gonna chime in with my 2 cents, because I've wanted those bathroom renovations for like 11 years. We know that it's very hard to justify spending on things in the future. So in my mind, if we're gonna do it right. So I'm gonna say, please don't pick the cheapest materials, like make it look good.
And last.
Yeah.
Well, they have to be compliant for ADA, which is going to be a significant portion of that cost of renovation.
So after all of the anticipated encumbrances for the HVAC and for the bathroom projects, and the other funds that are already earmarked, we're anticipating about $342,000 available. And so what we will be doing, probably beginning in the fall, we'll probably get some of the framework together over the summer, is create a stakeholder group, involve members of the community, involve teachers, involve students, certainly to some extent, and get feedback on how those additional funds can be allocated. And we'll certainly, obviously our administrative team will weigh in on that also.
So that's almost surplus, is that what you're saying, from what you've already kind of earmarked?
That's what we're anticipating. After the things that we identified as priorities, that's how much we think we'll have left over.
Okay.
Is any of the information that you're collecting during these envisioning sessions for future capital investments, or any of those, can they be applied to?
So while that wasn't an explicit question during those sessions, we can certainly use those things, because when we come up with our final list, we'll be able to look at, say, hey, here was a common thread that that our community, our staff and our students were telling us. Let's move this out of the potential bond referendum. Let's move this into the surplus conversation.
And,
Makes sense, spend
Yeah.
somebody else's money before we spend ours.
Exactly.
but are there restrictions on this is what you can spend it on and what you can't spend it on?
Yes, based on what's on that, what's on the second slide, permissible uses. And we're finding that the federal government has been pretty flexible, as long as you write your grant well and justify the expenditures. And I did put, if you'll notice, there's an asterisk next to, under ESSER 3 ARP, where it says must be allocated September 30th, 2024. The U.S. Department of Education actually just came out with a guidance memo, like literally 24 hours ago, that they will allow school districts extensions based upon request for certain capital projects. They didn't specify the time frame. The indication was that they would be very flexible in the time extensions, but they also emphasize the urgency to make sure the money that the federal government's putting out is going to good use.
And I just have a question concerning some of the upgrades we're looking to do. And so we have this possibly a surplus of $300,000, but inflation's gone through the roof. So are we accounting for that, or should we be hesitant to think we have extra, and can we funnel more money into that if inflation is going to
Well, we can't,
knock our budget out?
not necessarily funnel more money, we can reallocate the existing.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
like just because I wouldn't want to proceed with the project and it's going to come in more
Exactly.
than what we anticipate and not plan for that.
Yeah, I think that I found that to be a strength of how the money was allocated, given the flexibility that school districts were provided, as long as they're accountable to writing grants and being clear on the expenditures. So there is flexibility to reallocate funds within the Part 2 and 3.
So effective grant writing is also a common thread for everything you've just said. So are we properly staffed to provide effective grant writing services to collect as much money as we can?
Yeah, because the sum doesn't change. So it's not like if we,
Okay.
we write a masterpiece that we're going to get more money. It's just how we're allocating the money that the federal government said this is what you're getting.
So we need clever grant writers to be able to justify the allocations.
Yes.
Are we properly staffed for clever grant writing?
Yes, and I'll base that on, I think, our track record thus far.
Sure, I mean,
Dr. Murray's done a very good job with that, Mr. Catalano, we've had a lot of hands on deck helping.
Sandy?
helping with that. Yep.
Is that very effective grant activity?
I have a bathroom renovation question. Do all buildings have a single-use restroom for students and our faculty to have access to in case they're uncomfortable in a more communal?
Yes,
Does that make sense?
yes, all of our facilities
Have
have that.
something, okay.
Going back to, so when you brought up the went on inflation, I mean, we're talking about, now there's a huge procurement side in all this, and we're talking about using them for one specific piece, bathroom renovations. We're gonna have to go out to bid for all of this. So probably by the next time we meet, we'll be recommending a acceptance of a bid for bathroom renovations this summer. If the costs are too high, it's reason to reject all bids. And then maybe we have to go back to the drawing board and rethink this scope of what we want to do.
So my question on the bathroom renovation then, is it just replacing old fixtures, but it's the same configuration?
It is gutting bathrooms.
But then you, and which I don't know from the prior presentations, maybe the long range facilities committee knows, but do we have renderings of what they're gonna look like?
So yes, and we actually just floated those by our administrative team when we met a week ago. Our administrative, what was our, wherever on
That's
the.
Friday.
So, and we're looking for more of a universal look district-wide that helps greatly with maintenance, but is also, when you asked about before, much more modern look across the board than than anything we have existing right now.
And, are you gonna float the finishes by one of the committees, like long-range facilities or something? Yeah.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah, we
yeah.
just
I don't know
got
if you
that
guys remember.
Friday.
I'm good, well, yeah, you just got it, but like, so, you know, there's always a debate sometimes about whether and how much board members should get involved in things like picking out, but I heard an argument of a board one time arguing whether you ordered Kentucky bluegrass versus some other type of seed for the school lawn, but the thing is that I remember when table first started falling down and the person who was our business administrator at the time picked out the finishes that went up in the middle. And now that we're used to it, I personally don't think it looks bad at all, but when it first went up, a lot of people, not just the public, but even board members, were unhappy with it, and we're spending a lot of money, so I think it's good just to get multiple opinions, and it won't please everybody, but it should please the majority.
Thanks, Heather, we'll do that. Are all bathrooms getting done, like the whole district?
Bathrooms district-wide will be replaced, so we're doing it in 2 phases, this summer, next summer, but more this summer. We're trying to hit every district building this summer. However, with programs like ESY and summer learning acceleration going on over Central Middle, that'll be the toughest building to do. So it might be we do all the other buildings this summer and then that building next.
But it is every bathroom.
Almost every bit, not every. Well, we're not redoing the B-wing bathrooms. They were just renovated a few years ago. And maybe select a few other bathrooms, but almost every bathroom in the district.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited. Yeah, really. There's something else right now.
Yeah, it's a long time coming.
Make a better senior year for you?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, we'll have the health and physical education standards, Mr. Klaus.
I'm going to actually stand up over here and take us through this. So we're not going to see lessons today in the curriculum. We're going to talk about how we're getting to those things, because I know that's going to be summer work, but there's a lot of background work that has to come to be part of this. So all these links are live, so you can see these. So if you want to go home tonight and read the new health and PE standards put out by the State Department of Education, it's about 66 pages long. About 15 or 20 of those is the glossary defining terms, but the rest of it is just reviewing all the new standards, where they fall and what they are. A little history here. Now, the standards were approved by the State Department Board of Education. And in April, there was an ask for the governor to do a review, to go back and look at these again and say, hey, is this really what should be happening? Is this really what to do? And that was the beginning of April. April 14th, DOE sent out a broadcast clarifying what they call misconceptions. And here's the 3 big things they talked about. The first is that the LEA, that's the school district, has discretion to adopt the curriculum. The Department of Education does not tell us what curriculum we have to teach. They tell us the standards we have to meet. So they tell us what we have to do. We decide how we do it. That's the difference in those 2 things. That's how that works. And any report indicating they do that from a specific vendor is not true. So what happened was, when it came out, there were model or sample curricula that came out with it that people assumed was a DOE approved curriculum. That was not it. The most well known of that was one was called blue, pink, purple, or pink, blue, purple curriculum. That's not, we don't have to use that. That was out there, but we decided what it looks like, how we meet the standards in our district. Parent statement of conflict or conscience. Parents have the right to opt out of these topics if they want to. If it conflicts with their personal beliefs, if it conflicts with those things. This is not new. This is a law that was passed in 1979, I think. It's been in our policy for health and PE forever. What the thing that doesn't happen is people don't know about it, right? So one of the emphasis here, these came from the Department of Ed. Make sure people understand this, that they have this opportunity, and how they take advantage of it. That was a big thing they pushed on. And And they are asking for family and community engagement, which is why this is usually summer work, and we're starting it earlier, because we're gonna try to look for ways to hear from people, like we'll probably do tonight, about what they feel about these. Now, the interesting thing that happened is May 3rd, I think it was, this is a live link to the letter, 4 of the 13 board members of the State Department of Education asked the governor and the Board of Ed, Board of Ed, to put a pause on this. They were concerned about 2 things: whether the age appropriateness of all the topics was really correctly done, and some of the languages they call graphic language. So there have been board members of the State Department of Ed who have said, we need to stop and think about this again. So we're waiting to hear result of that, because that is something that is now being considered, that there may be another eminent review coming up. I don't have any more information, and that's where that is in that process. It's been a request by those folks. Here's what we're doing. We are now in the process of reviewing and updating our curriculum to align with the revised PE curriculum standards. The state, as I said, tells us what they want us, what has to happen. We decide what it looks like when it comes to practice in our classrooms. Moving forward, we are hiring a consultant, Dr. Michael Hodges. He is a doctorate in this area. He's going to work with our team to make sure he can tell us guidance about how this looks, what we should be doing with it, best way to do it, how we get community feedback. So he's going to be guiding some of this curriculum work and curriculum writing we're doing. We have currently gone through and started auditing what we do now, what the new standards do, and where they misalign or don't align, where they meet. It's we are pretty much already doing a lot of this stuff where we are. So you'll see that. I'm going to continue reporting on this in board meeting progress. We are going to be curriculum over summer, and we are going to develop opportunities for additional community feedback. Because as the State Department of Ed said, make sure you check with your community on this. So we're going to be doing that. Something to know, PE curriculum, or phys ed and health curriculums, they run in grade bands. So the grade bands are by the end of 2nd grade, you must do this, by the end of 5th grade, by the end of 8th grade, by the end of 12th grade. That's how the grade bands work. And the other thing to notice, most of the information, the content, is already been in our curriculum, in the state curriculum. It's just it's moved around a little bit. So there's 3 core standards, 3 performance expectations that gather the most attention. So I'm going to take you through what they are, and then we'll have time during public comment to talk about those. The first is by the end of 2nd grade. For idea, every individual has unique skills and quantities, which can include activities enjoyed, such as how to make dress, mannerisms, things like that. This is gender stereotyping, right? This is saying, blue is for boys, pink is for girls. We don't want that stereotype. We want, they should be able to feel how they want to feel, dress how they want to dress. Girls can be doctors, boys can be artists, girls can be mathematicians. This is gender stereotyping, trying to avoid that. We already do this. One of the misconceptions in other curriculums, they're talking about gender identity here. We're not talking gender identity, we're talking gender stereotype. So this is something we already do. This won't really change much in our curriculum because we already address the fact that you can be who you want to be. Boy and girl, you can be a scientist, you can be whatever you want to be, an artist, whomever. By the 5th grade, puberty lessons. We already do this, right? We already have lessons where the students, they learn about puberty, the change of their bodies are going to happen. Now, the other thing, this is a good example of the what and the how. Everything in parentheses here, that's optional. So we can decide what works into our curriculum and what doesn't work in our curriculum. But as I said, we already have these puberty lessons. This won't change anything we do right now. The next one is the one that changes. This is by the end of 8th grade. They went to the factors that contribute to making healthy decisions about sex. And they are expected, they have formula expectations, definition of vaginal, oral, and anal sex. And there's the reasons why. This is the reason the Department of Ed put out. Agencies over their own bodies, language and understanding, informed decision-making and communication. So this is something we don't do right now. So this is something we'll look at and say, how do we approach this? What do we do with it? That's what the work is going to be over the summer, okay? And there's ideas already of how to do it, but I'm not going to throw them out there because I'm not an expert in this. We do have people who do this. So that's what's going on with that. And so we're moving forward. We're going to start making this work forward, and keeping everyone informed. We're not quite sure about how we're gonna do some of those things yet, but we are gonna give access to, for community feedback. We're gonna try to keep this up to date as out in the open as much as possible. June 23rd, I'll have more details on what this looks like, and a lot of this will be summer. So, and that's what I talked to you about, what it is.
Yeah, that's
We're
not,
trying
no,
to
that's
say
all
sorry.
right,
Yeah.
no, that's okay.
Yes,
So, no, sorry, go ahead, Steph.
My question was, you said we're not teaching this in 8th grade. Is this part of our curriculum anywhere? The 8th grade curriculum, and it's what grade?
junior year.
Okay.
A lot of schools do it in 9th grade, and one of the discussions that we're having already was, do we move that family planning, traditional sex ed,
Right.
to 9th grade rather than 11th grade? That was something that we were discussing anyway. Then this curriculum came out with it in a lower grade level.
Got it.
So we're gonna be hiring a consultant to help, the PE and health teachers develop the curriculum.
Navigate this and do the how. We're told the what, and how.
It will still be our curriculum.
So be our
Right? We're not
curriculum.
buying a curriculum from this
We're
person.
buying curriculum for this person. We're gonna, because the community feedback is something that we have to keep in mind.
And, okay, yeah, so even though there's a consultant, we'll have the final say.
This is our
and
stuff,
help.
right, yes.
Okay.
So what will it look like? I completely get that there's a lot of work to do between here and Endgame. But what will it look like? What will when you present, okay, this is what we talked about. Is it that here's how we're going to approach it?
There'll be more of that. It won't be a day-to-day lesson.
Right.
But it will be a how we're going to approach it. This is what it's going to look like, especially in those areas, those 3 areas right there. We're going to really be specific about our specific approach there. The other thing we have to make sure we do is, once we have this in place, really communicate well to families about when things are being presented, when they're being taught. There are hundreds of standards. So if you object to the puberty standard, because you want to deal with that as a family and not have a teacher work that through, that's fine. But you need to know when it's happening, right? Because that's one of 100 standards. All the others you may be fine with. So we have to be very, very conscious of making people aware of what's happening ahead of time so decisions can be made by families.
And on that, one of the things where the equity council or the equity event that we had that came up was ensuring that those who opt out, that's not seen as punitive, like how.
No, that's.
So planning ahead for that as well.
That's
incorporating that into.
That's in the law, that this is
that
their option.
That you don't feel isolated somehow.
You have to honor parents' requests for this, and it is not punitive. And you don't get busy work to do, something to that effect. They'll come up with meaningful stuff to do that will not be with that time.
So on those same lines, and it sounds like, you're headed in this direction and you're not saying it yet because the details need to be worked out. And I'm jumping to something that is not necessarily what you're going to do, but it's how I'm envisioning it. For me, from my experience as a parent, what would be really helpful is if there was, a document that, unfortunately would be at least 2 pages long, maybe 3, but just saying, like, in this month, we're gonna hit this topic so that you know in advance. I know, and the reason why I say this is I know that there were some English books that my kids read in middle school, and I had 1 or 2 mothers contact me because they only had 2 days warning that we're gonna be bringing up this topic, and none of us felt that the topic was inappropriate for the age. It's just that we had like a day and a half to potentially have the conversation with our kids first, and we didn't want to be put on the spot when we might be traveling for work or have other conflicts. So my point is just, you were already alluding to it, but whatever's covered in this and maybe other things to let people know far in advance that they can grab it over the summer. And
so we have all of our curriculum maps posted online. And so when this new curriculum is written, the maps will be posted online so people can look. But I think in this case, that's not enough, right? You need a forward progressive communication because of the nature of this. So I agree with you 100%.
And like as an example, the curriculum map in English doesn't say this is what we're going to be talking about because the purpose is not to talk about it, just happens to be in the book. So,
excuse me, Heather, please be quiet. We need to hear this.
Anyway, my point is that I do think it's good to know in advance. Second thing is, will this presentation that you just showed, will that be posted online?
Yeah, it'll be posted online tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning, okay. Yeah, because I don't remember really the details of that last slide, and it was the 8th grade slide.
Yeah, okay, well, again.
But what I was also just trying to just confirm that I heard, like, basically, this is what the state is saying we have to do, and then we're gonna figure out with the community and everything, what we feel is the best way to address it, is that?
Right, so we have to, the standard is, okay, I'll close it by accident. The standard is, whatever the standard may be, that's what it has to be, it has to talk about. Hold on a second, I'm sorry, I closed it.
No, my main question is that there's no wiggle room, like I saw things in the column on the right, and those are things we have to do, it's not optional. We just have to figure out how.
It's not optional for us as a district, but it's optional for parents.
Well,
To
so,
have their kids to
right.
attend.
Okay.
so there are things, there is, there's several sentences. So I'll pull this one up again. So a good example here in puberty, 5th grade, this is the 5th grade, puberty, right? And so they want us to be able to make sure that by the time the kids are in 5th grade, before they actually reach puberty, they have an understanding what's going to happen to their body. That's the whole thing. That's the reason why they want that. Then in here, there's other things: romantic and sexual feelings, masturbation, mood swings, timing of onset. How we deal with that and how much we go into that, that's kind of our level decision, right? So that's that parenthetical piece there is like, okay, how do you deal with that? In the 8th grade, this is what they do. There are factors that contribute to making healthy decisions about sex. That's what we have to teach, right? How that looks in our classroom may look differently than it looks in Haddon Township or Haddon Heights or Collingswood or whomever, right? Because we just have to make sure that the factors that contribute to make healthy decisions about sex is something that kids have access to. And how that looks for us might look somewhere different.
And that makes sense. I guess the only thing that is going through my head, right, is just, I think it's a difficult thing to put on paper because, people put bullets on paper and what one teacher interprets that as and what verbally comes out of their mouth is different than.
That's the work this summer, right? That's the hard work this summer. That's what we're going to be working on, making sure that we do have that.
Yeah,
Like,
we
you
have to have
understand.
tighter
And
parameters,
have it
yeah.
correctly, yes.
rather than-
And not just walk in and wing and say, we're talking about this today, right? That's the plan is to do a well-written, well-constructed curriculum, communicate it to the community so everyone understands what we're doing in classes.
And then you all will work to make that into detailed lesson plans.
Correct.
That's not.
That's
Right.
that's as we go.
Yeah.
When those lesson plans hit, we'll also have to be communicated out.
And you already do, I have a 5th grader, so the school contacted us about the puberty lesson
Yeah.
and asked, like this, we have these procedures already, so again, it's not
Right.
as
Well,
big of a change as it sounds.
The 2nd and 5th grade are really not big changes. They're
Right.
probably just tweaking things a little bit. The 8th grade is a big change because that's the high school curriculum. That's forcing down. So that's a whole different piece right there.
So for our district, it's moving, as you said, from 11th to 8th,
Correct.
essentially for that
Right.
component.
For that component. But for both, and for the high school, there's almost no difference in the high school curriculum we're doing right now.
Right.
So that's that 8th grade, and that's why it's one of the 3, right? It's one of the 3 because that is a big change for a lot of school districts.
It's interesting, I'm 43 and we definitely did that in 8th grade. To me, I'm like, wait, what happened?
We had it in 12th, and I still remember one of my classmates had already delivered a child by then. And I was like, can I get out of this because I've already done this? And
Yeah, so I mean, it's a lot of work, and it's going to be hard work, and it's going to be,
And I do, part of this is, if you read some of it, part of the philosophy for moving down to 8th grade, which I can understand, but and including the anal sex is so that students who are violated have
That's part
language
of the
for
rationale.
them.
Right?
That's part of the
And that is one of the reasons, because many don't even, they don't have a concept of it.
Right.
And so, possibly that's one of the, just an awareness around it, that if that happens, that's, because they may not have language for it. And as we know, a lot of times that unfortunate, if something happens, that, that at least that gives them the language.
If you go to that document.
So more than a kind of.
If you go to the document that the state provided, about the rationale, they have, what's that? No, that's the curriculum.
Okay.
The one that talked about the DOE broadcast updating misconceptions. They have in there links to all of their rationale for age appropriateness and the reasons why. So that's all linked in there. And hey, age appropriateness in that conversation. That's a fact. I understand that family thing completely, right? I mean, that's something that's very, very personal to who you are, your family. So there's a lot in there. So that's where we are with it.
And I realized, honestly, I've been nothing but impressed by how our teachers have always handled everything. But I don't know if, I just keep thinking, I have two children and they're very different. And I say that because one probably already knows everything well before it's, explained to them. And the other one really enjoyed preserving their childhood and their innocence. And it wasn't from me. They liked that. And, I would as a mother, right, just be like, oh, I really don't want you, like, and then even though we have the option of taking out, and even though I know it would never be punitive, the student often just doesn't ever want to do that because they feel awkward, right? It's not that they think they're going to be punished, they just don't want to be the only one leaving. And it is what it is, but I'm just saying. So in case other people don't have that perspective, because, I think my one child is a little bit of an anomaly in wanting to preserve that, but I appreciate that because you're only a child once,
So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Heather, I really do, and I think that this is it's a tough conversation to have. I think that the important thing is I'm very pleased that we're not winging it and we're not saying we'll figure it out. Hiring a consultant is, I think, the right thing to do, and then I think having choice. I actually know for a fact, not this 8th grade curriculum, but the 5th grade curriculum, I know that there were people that opted out, and it was not, there was no stigma. It was, some did it, some didn't. It was A-okay. So I'm hoping that that's the same kind of approach that we'll have here. We handle it the way that we need to, professionally, but then there are options for families to say, that's not for me.
I don't know, I was a former English teacher. There were times when we had children say, I don't want to read this novel. Say, fine, read a different novel. We work with that. When we have children who suffer with certain, depression and stuff like that, if there's suicide needs come up, we make people aware and say, listen, you can sit this one out if you want to. Right? We try to be very cognizant of the fact that everyone is different. It's going to impact them differently. And it's not our job to impose these things on people. It's our job to educate and work with them. And sometimes that means we can find something else for you to read today. Right? That's sometimes what that means. Right? So that's how we work with it.
And I do think that's hard to predict who would get upset about something, right? It's not like this is super straightforward. It's all really complicated. I mean, I'm a math educator. I would like to opt my kids out long division. And this is my field, but it's like not worth the time, right? But I'm not in charge and I don't work for the State Department, so I can't dictate the standards and the execution, but anyway.
Well, can you just describe how the community works different, and how we apply standards? This isn't just the only place we do it. Right. So, and this is that teacher-child-parent relationship to say, I'm not comfortable with that book. Okay, but there's still standard. You still have to read an Elizabethan English book of some sort. Right. Because that's the unit right there. Yeah. So choose another one. If you don't want to do Romeo and Juliet, there's the Tempest. There's Agilon.
The English examples shows that we're flexible, but it's not the same thing, right? Because you still have to hit the standards of inferencing and those. Sure. This is different. This is you say, we don't want you to talk about this or give anything like this to my child, and we will not, right? So there is that difference.
And that's why we broadcast well in advance these topics and why it sits in the health and curriculum. I walk you into this. Right, so, right, so this is what makes this different. That's why you don't get a choice over every aspect of their curriculum. This is very specific because it is very personal.
And they aren't recurring lessons, which is probably important to know, right? I mean, these are usually isolated lessons. And I think that's important for envisioning it, right? You're not, if you're going to be learning to define anal sex, it's probably going to be a single isolated, lesson.
You're not scaffolding.
Like that's what I'm saying, you're not opting out of like a week, so it does make it a little bit easier. The opting out makes it easier than even a book because it is something.
If you look at the standards, I mean, there's sexuality and there's also hygiene, right? So that's also healthy.
Yeah, so
right?
yeah, and
So
they wouldn't
there's-
be
we look
mixed.
at
I
that.
would think that you would have the units separated so
Yes,
that
yeah, absolutely.
more.
Instruction would be.
Yeah, right.
Okay, any other comments on health?
No, I would simply say, I think as adults in the room and kids watching, we can all acknowledge that this is a challenging topic and has been since the beginning of time. I don't think any parent has ever said, ooh, I can't wait to talk to my teenager about hormones and puberty and sexual feelings. So let's just get that out there first and foremost. I feel I'm really pleased that our district is engaging with experts who have navigated in this space before because it is complex. And as Dave just alluded to, it's not the same as which Shakespearean tome would you like to read this afternoon? It's very different. And I also just, I get that this is a passionate topic and we all want to keep our kids safe. We all want the best for our children. As the mother of two girls, if I could preserve them, and send them to the nunnery, I would consider that in the future. I'm joking. My children are cringing right now. But the point is that we want to do this in a smart way. And I really like the way the district is handling that and saying, hey, families, we respect you and your decisions. If you feel strongly about this, you have a choice. So.
And you know what, I think you're right, and I think that the one thing that we need to keep in mind is this isn't something that Chuck decided we're gonna do, right? It's like, I think we should do this. I mean, this has been handed down to us. We have to abide by certain rules, and then how we handle them is.
The how's the kid.
Yeah.
How's the kid.
Yeah. So it's not.
Gotta be done in a thoughtful.
Right.
Inclusive manner.
Right, so to have a discussion of should we do it or should we not do it, that's not for this board to discuss. It is making sure that we're comfortable with the way that the school is going to handle it and making sure that parents have options. So that's what this board can do.
Standards versus curriculum. Last week, policy versus regulation.
Yeah.
They're kind of the same thing.
Okay, thank you. And I know it's a difficult conversation, so I appreciate everybody. We look forward to hearing comments during the public comment period. We'll move on now to board committees. Curriculum committee, Meg, I think you did that last week, so thank you very much for that. Dave, would you like to do finance and facilities?
Sure, I'll do finance and facilities. We met the other day. We didn't have a full house. So I'll get to one item that will come almost not as a committee of the whole, but as a presentation for Mike as a whole, so that we all hear it at the same time. We talked about, so we've had this recurring conversation with the crew club about funding. So we gave them an assignment to go do research with other clubs and how they're funded, if they're funded through the state or through their school districts. So they came back to us, they presented some information. We are going to solicit the opinion of the school, so the opinion of the club. So we'll be making calls to ADs in the same schools and other schools that we now have crew programs and see not only how they fund, but their sources of funds. There were a few North Jersey schools on there that absolutely have nonprofits that funnel money in through the school district for some extracurricular activities. Some schools are nearly completely funded by the state versus, a town like ours that's not. So we've directed the research to not only ask what do you give, but where are your sources of funds coming from? we might be able to learn something or create a different structure to be able to help them out. So that took a bit of time. The PTA donation, we had talked about last time that not a fountain, but an outdoor water bottle filler, that the grant didn't come through, so they were going back to have options. We talked about options that they could do, that we could do. You'll see a late addition to the agenda tonight because the Tatum PTA came through for the 5th grade remembrance to fill the gap, I guess, to pick up the rest of the funds. So on approval tonight is to accept those funds so that they can do their 5th grade project. The field study with the borough. So the borough came to us with a proposal to go halfsies, so to speak, on a on a study for field usage and scheduling and what's the right sport on the right field at the right time and how much. So we said, sure, going in halves. So that's also on the agenda for tonight. We made it clear that this is for informational purposes only, that we're not bound by any decision for that, but we'll better understand the usage of our own facilities and the part we play in the overall town, rec programs, as well as our own program. And then we had a funny discussion about the summer paint crews and what projects are going to tackle during the summer. That led to, could we have service projects? Could we employ student workers to do some low-level things? Is it punitive as it was when I was in 7th grade and having to scrape lockers all summer? So I know how to get stickers off of metal, I'll tell you that. But so it became a fun discussion on that. But the one that wasn't on the agenda, and the reason was because there just wasn't enough, there weren't enough board members to really hear it, so everyone should hear it. And that is, back in March, we approved RFPs for different services, substitute teacher services, food service, our doctor of record, those types of things. So Mike's going to explain on the agenda our approvals of those things, but we asked to explain the process of selection, how many people bid on those, on different services that we had put out. And they're all service contracts, so we have some discretion on how we pick them. So Mike will just go over all that.
Before we do that, could I just go back to a question that I have? About...
Sure. And I don't even know if we're doing that now. I was going to actually ask the question. Will that be during the finance?
Yeah, we could do either. Do you want to save it until we go through voting on it? I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the right thing is.
I guess we could do either. Well, we'll let Linda, you go your question
I just
first.
have just a question about the field study. Who's doing the study? What is involved with that?
So that link is in the agenda for who would be doing this?
So they're called Sport Field Solutions. They're certified sports field consultants.
Okay.
And it was found, and this was a request from the borough to us to go half-see. So they've already vetted the vendor.
Good.
And we're just cutting it in. So it still leaves a question about when to discuss it.
Yeah, we'll wait until we go through the points. How about that? Okay, I scrolled down, I know it. Oh, LRFP. Do you want to talk a minute about the visioning sessions that we had?
I did do that last week.
You did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we're finished those. Rachel had a good question that she had, but why don't you ask that now? Because I thought that was a good question about.
Surveying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if, and this is last week, then I think for a week, so here I am with my ideas. Because the visioning sessions didn't have as large a turnout as we thought, I was wondering if it makes sense to put a little blip in the process and maybe ask the architecture firm or whoever was doing the visioning for what the buckets were, or however you described it, like the key things, and blasting it to the community, like QR codes posted as an ad, and then send it to parents to see if there's priorities that we could hear before the school year's out, right? Like that we have a captive audience to hear what, because maybe nobody cares about something, and so, yeah, just a quick survey that would just let people
We can talk to them about that.
chime in, or,
And
and maybe have another, like, fill in something that you don't see here,
Yeah, we could do something.
that kind of thing. I just wonder if that would let us hear from our people.
people who couldn't show up in
Yeah,
person
right.
have an easier time responding to a email survey.
And brief, nothing, not time consuming, but just,
Not a lot of reading.
yeah.
The difference is from a human nature standpoint, I made this comment to Chuck on the one I went to, it was okay attended, but it wasn't that great, is you can ask people for their ideas and maybe they don't have them or they don't feel qualified, but everyone will give you an opinion on the ideas that are generated.
Right.
Yeah.
I just worry about context. So if there's like a middle ground there that you're saying, okay, here's that saying, they did a very effective use of poll everywhere to ask people
Right.
priorities, but without the context, is that how? And the crowd really fed off of each other. I mean, that was part of the
Yeah.
exercise too.
No, I
So
know that's what's pretty important to be in person.
the asterisk that I would put would say, well, this is the information that was collected from the community in person
Exactly.
through dialogue, and then this was survey results, but they're still in the
Right.
ideation stage and not in the
Right.
soliciting feedback stage.
See, my concern is, and I mean, we try to be very communicative. And I think it's a great idea because the more feedback we get, the better. And so my concern is we send a message out and say, hey, we're still thinking about these, but here's idea 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's isolated. Like you said, Dave, there's no context. And then suddenly there's this whole spin-off of, did you know that they're doing idea 2? And it was like, no, we're really just talking about it. We're still trying to get
Right.
feedback. So that
I
is my
do think
only
there is
concern.
some perception though that we already have a plan, and we don't. We genuinely do not have any plan, we wanna hear what people, and so I'm thinking you don't number them. Like, I'm thinking of a survey, like you just put the list and then I could sort it and tell you which is my most favorite, I can like slide them around or something like that, and then have if you couldn't attend, what would you wanna add,
Yeah, I guess
or,
it's
I don't know,
you're always gonna
a
have
visioning.
We could talk to them and see if they've had experience with that before, and
Right,
get some ideas from them, and if not, we'll sit down with them, see if we can figure out a way to get more feedback.
Yeah, right.
I love
So-
horse ranking.
Right, I think it's so fun to, yeah. Surveys are much cooler than when I was a kid.
Or it doesn't even have to be a force, there's many ways to do it, I think.
Yeah.
However it's done though,
Yeah.
there should be thought put into it, because I don't know if the architecture firm is a specialist in creating surveys, and I've seen multiple surveys come out that have just been,
Yeah, but, and they've got a pretty sophisticated
Ever since
comms
Google
process.
has surveys now, I feel like every place surveys you,
Yes.
and I'm like.
Well, honestly, I had a class about how to create, like, there's people who specialize in it, and I realize that's not us, but.
Right, and they might not be
Sometimes
experts in
about
surveying,
surveys.
but the architects are the experts in bringing
Garnering,
these types of projects to reality.
yeah,
So-
and garnering input,
Yeah,
that's
and
one thing
garnering
that they are
input.
specialized.
And that's why we chose Land
Yeah,
Associates.
exactly, like that's one of their selling points. Okay, PTA updates, anyone?
No, I think we did those last week. I actually had one today, yesterday. We did the middle school.
Can you
PTA.
talk a little bit louder, just
I'm
because
so
it's
sorry.
it's
Yes.
feedback I'm getting is that
Yeah.
online when people watch, they
I
can't
think
always
this
hear.
might be the first time anybody ever told me to talk more.
I'm sorry. I know, no one has ever said that to me because it's so loud.
So we had in the middle school PTA. It was a little sad because it was Tracy's last PTA meeting. But she was very excited. She talked about Hamisi coming in, and he's very excited. So they talked about the transition plan that will be in place. That was that bit of transition. And then they talked about all the fun things that are happening right now. Sixth grade transition will actually be able to be in person this year. It wasn't able to be done in person for the last couple of years. And then there's a field day, Tall Pines, Medford Lakes, Great Adventure Swim Party. So all those fun things, which I just it makes me happy for the kids. And they are looking for people to join the PTA. So they're going to be having an open house and hosting an open house to try and get not only people on the PTA, but I think they're also looking for leadership there. The president said that she spoke to you about the photos, and it was just a misunderstanding of the COVID-related type misstep. I think many of us that when our kids went through middle school, you just knew it was just ingrained into you. You don't take pictures, nobody takes pictures. And then these kids, they went through middle school during COVID, so they didn't have record, they didn't have that. And so it was just a misunderstanding. And sorry, won't happen again, kind of thing. And that's it.
Right, I want to say thank you to the HMS PTA for the dances, right? Because I think, like, you had.
So many.
Yeah, there's, and they
Kids
were
love
been
them.
very well received. They're at the E Lounge now, is that the E
Yep.
Lounge?
Mhm.
Tommy kept calling it the G Lounge.
Yeah, the-
Tom's like, was it G Bar? He's like, no, I'm like, it's
No, luckily, not the G bar, but, yes,
That
sixth,
would be
seventh,
a
and eighth
swanky
grade.
eighth grade party.
That would be. But sixth, seventh, and eighth grade all had their events there, and the kids just had a total blast. Huge thanks to the organizers, the PTA, and the many chaperones who got to observe the really loud enthusiasm of kids eating cupcakes and Shirley Temples and being really wild in a healthy, happy way,
Lot
and
of
enjoying a
dancing,
chance
I
to be with
heard,
their
yeah.
friends. So that's what it's all about.
So I have one update from the HET. The HET did not meet today. They couldn't pull a quorum, not even close. So, but they did via email vote, which is in their bylaws, is allowed to do. They approved a $1,000 donation to the district to cover expenses for awards, senior awards night. That's nice. They have the same number of golfers they've always had, but they have a lot less advertisers than they ever had. So if you want to have eyeballs and you want to sponsor a whole a contest or whatever, this is the shameless plug to get your sign on the fifth hole, and the same number of people that have ever seen it will see it, but you'll have less competition. So sponsor a hole. Details on the HET website. Just Google HET. Haddonfield Educational Trust.
Okay, Dr. Krill, do you have an assistant superintendent's report today, or is that kind of wrapped in your?
I do not.
ESSER, thank you. I've never, I don't think I've said it right yet. Okay, Mr. Klaus, superintendent's report?
Sure, this is not necessarily a report, but just, I need to speak to a topic tonight. As we all know, I sent out a notification yesterday about an incident with one of our athletic teams in West Deptford. I need to address some things here tonight. I'm not addressing that incident. Right? I'm not going to talk details of that incident. That would be unfair to a lot of people who had nothing to do with it, and people who would be lumped in with it. So that's not what we're talking about. That's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about more who we strive to be, and maybe how we learn from this and try to be who we want to be. I'm going to start by saying I'm a member of this community. My kids went to school here. I've been here forever. Haddonfield Borough, although sometimes not painted this way, it's a wonderful place, right? Great people, great families, great kids. I think we have to come to that, back to that, right? Are we flawed? Yes. Are mistakes made? Yes. I'm not going to doubt that. I would never argue that anyway. But I've been here a long time, and I've known a lot of people, and I've to the end, I'll say again, I'm proud to be a member of this community. So we have to know, we might have to acknowledge that we are flawed. We have standards, and sometimes we don't meet them. We have expectations we want to be, and sometimes we don't quite get there. Sometimes we stumble, and sometimes we fall, not just stumble. When we have hurtful things happening from people in our community or whatever, that especially deal with race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, that's a real flaw. We can't deny it. It's not acceptable. It's something that we have to put an end to as best we can. And it has to be owned, right? It has to be owned. We have to say, we're flawed, and here's a flaw that we need to look at, and we need to go deep into, and we need to see do our best to fix it. That's what we have to do. That's what I have to do. We have to admit we have these errors. These things cut. They cut the people it happens to, and they cut us when we realize we've fallen short of who we want to be and where we want to be in our work. Those things are so important. And it comes back to this. We're a school district. Our mission is to grow and learn and get better. That's what we're set up to do. And this is an area that we take pride in. We have cultural response, we have SEL. These are things we want to try to get better at. They're our district strategic goals. And so we really need to look at how we're going to do that. And my job as superintendent of schools, I have to take ownership of who we are. I get praise for our highlights. I have to take ownership of our lowlights. This is what I do for a living, right? And because of that, I can speak, by the way, for my administrative team, I've speaking before them. I think they all believe the same thing. And so for that, I sat and I wondered, what do we do next? Where do we go from here? What are we doing that needs to be different? What are we doing that needs to be the same? All of those things. And there's things that we need empathy, we need to have understanding. I think we need to reframe some of the things we look at, right? So our athletes, they're ambassadors for the school district. We put our school district name on their shoulder and we send them out to show who we are, right? And so it's important and that they have, we don't train them like ambassadors. We don't give them that knowledge. We train those ambassadors like everyone else, right? We don't say special things for this group, who, by the way, in the heat of a moment, it's going to sound like I'm not justifying. Mistakes sometimes happen when you haven't been prepared for what those mistakes are how it's going to feel at certain times. I don't know that any of us sat down and I coached here for 20 some years. Our athletes look on TV and they see athletes on TV and they emulate that. Have we ever said to them, maybe that's what we should ever think that, right? They're the type of things we don't train our ambassadors. I'm going to say everything ambassadors, right? Everyone who goes to school as differently than anyone else. I think we need to really say, hey, should we do that? What should happen there? All of those things. And so I have to ask myself, are we doing enough? Unfortunately, I don't think we are. I have to ask if what we're doing permeates the entire community. So are we doing training and are we training our ambassadors? Are we giving support? Are we listening to just the top layer or are we diving deep into what we want to have happen? I don't think we are. I think we've gotten better at it, but I don't think we are. And then I have to admit, we need to be more effective, right? Once again, I'm talking about me owning this stuff, right? So I have some ideas of stuff. These are just ideas. I've run it by a few people, but these are the type of things I think we need to start looking at. I started looking at my team. We want to develop a task force, an action team, parents, students, administrators, coaches, community members, to really sit down and say, how can we put together a plan where we know we're confident that our supports and our training permeates the entire group, everyone in the community? How can we do that? That's not an easy task. It's one that takes everything. I think we should have like a council of student leaders who are involved with this, who come back and give feedback. They know what training works. They know what supports help more than we do, and have a group who's going to come back and say, we did this training and no one got it. How about this type of training? And talk about that. Have our students who are excellent at doing these things, we can see one right here, right? Take the leadership and ownership of this and tell us where to go. But we're telling them what we think they need to know. We're not asking them, what do you need to know, right? And so I think we have to flip that script a little bit, right? Because when you ask them, they won't know, but if you give them the opinion, they'll feel about this. We want to flip that script a little bit and really get that going that way. We need to move away from the top-down thing I was just talking about. Students and coaches can best tell us what we need. I need to emphasize this. My concentration on what we need to do and my concentration on the fact that this is a good community, I'm not making excuses for the swastikas, there's been a lot, right? I'm not making excuses for this. I'm not sweeping it away. I'm not trying to minimize it. But these actions have to stop. They're wrong. They're hurtful. And they hurt people to the core. They're not allowing what we're going to do. But if we don't do something different, they're not going to stop. But we need to start really thinking about how we do some of the training deeper down. And that's what we need to start doing. I mean, I own this, right? If we don't do this, if we don't change some of this thought process, we're never going to change who we are right now. So I wanted to emphasize that. As a leader of the school district, I accept the responsibility for this. I take it very seriously. I want us to move forward. I'm going to work with staff and community to change this ugliness to be better. And this is a point I want to make very strongly. And this might be the most important point, because we've messed up on this before. I'll say I messed up on this before. Chuck has messed up on this before. I am proud to be a member of this community, to have this job. My children went to school here. It is a great place. And when we fall, it's even more important to remember that. because we can't dismiss those people. When we had an event a few years ago, those children felt like we dismissed them. A mistake was made and we cast them aside. That's how they felt, that's how they should have felt, because we didn't handle it right. What we need to realize that to get better and to move this forward comes with pride and love. And that's what we have to commit to as a school district, as an administrative team. I know the 9 of you do. I know I do. I know administration there do. I have teachers in the back, they all do. It's got to be based on the fact that it's about pride and who we are. It's about the love for the kids. It's about this town. And if we don't couch this in that, we will fail. And I just want to make that point. So I just wanted to address that, talk about how I feel about it, talk about what I want to see happen, and we'll be getting back to you about what this may look like once we start pulling things together.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. I mean, I know we've talked about this a lot. I've talked about it with a lot of members in the community. It's a sensitive time for us and one that we can use, as Chuck was saying, that we can grow from. And so the best we can do is support our students and learn that how can we best support them going forward as well. And how can we best impact those that we interact with also. And thinking about one of the things we don't always, especially as children, understand and adults, we don't always understand how our actions are impacting others. And a lot of times when we talk about DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we're talking about is really everyone. And this idea of developing awareness of how something we say might impact another, regardless of, and no one's left out of that. And really understanding that, and a lot of times, I think part of this is an opportunity for us to really, unfortunately, we have reminders that remind us of how important it is to keep in mind how our behavior is perceived by others and how we're impacting other people. And so Chuck, you said it very well, and I think it's a hard time, and I think we're going to grow from this, and I think that within time we'll have a good plan going forward, and we look forward to input as well from the community. Okay, at this time, that's right.
But this is a great segue though, because the Jamie just wanted me to just give an update on where we were with board retreat planning, and everybody sees that you've got this book in front of you, but the perfect segue for what you guys just talked about, think again, and the subtitle is The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know. And we made a concerted effort this year to kind of go one step further with what our board retreat is, and to really start looking at what we're going to do, how do we become more effective. And one of the things, we'll get back to you because we're going to be meeting within the next week. And you already got the book, the governance core, and the purpose of that is we'll each take a chapter and we'll reflect on that. But then the other was to read this book, and the idea of let's look at things differently. And I think that it couldn't come at a better time after what you guys talked about. I think that we're all very committed to saying, we don't have to live within the constructs of what came before. It's okay to look at things differently, and the freedom to really think critically and move forward together as a board. So I think that we're looking forward to that retreat, and I personally love this book, and I hope if you haven't read it, that you will enjoy it. And oh my gosh, if Dave can get Adam Grant.
At least introduce it to.
Yes.
When is the retreat? Just one time about.
July 24th.
July 4th.
I'll send you the date.
And when you guys can you send out the chapter that we're responsible for?
Yeah.
We're going to meet and figure that out. We just have the planning within the next week or so to finalize the planning. Absolutely.
If you didn't get the governance book, I have it. Yeah, because I was supposed to drop it off to you. So,
It's driving around in the car.
yeah, it's been driving around my car. It's in the back. It's in my trunk. So.
I sent out an invite for everyone on the 28th, July 28th. So if you don't have an invite, let me know.
Okay, so moving on to open public comment, we'll now begin the open public comment session. Members of the community are invited to speak for no more than 3 minutes about agenda items at this time. Non-agenda comments will be taken at the end of the meeting and follow the same guidelines. For this purposes, if you're here and if you want to make a comment on the health curriculum, although it's not technically on the agenda, it is on a presentation. So I just want to make it clear, you can come up now if you don't have to wait till the end. Non-agenda items will be taken at the end of the meeting and follow the same guidelines. If your 3 minutes is up, we invite you to get back in line if you'd like to make additional comments. This is an opportunity for the board to listen but not debate issues or enter a question and answer period. Please be aware that not all issues brought up before a board meeting will be resolved that evening. We ask you to state your name and the name of your street so that a designee can get back to you with a response if warranted. General responses to comments will be posted on the Board of Education website under the Resources tab where it says Open Public Comment Replies. While public education can be an emotional issue, we strive to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Public meetings are recorded and televised, and students often participate in the meetings. As such, citizens are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility.
So I'm Tracy Matozo and I don't live in Haddonfield, but for the past 10 years I have. It's been a home for me and it's been a home for my son. And I won't have the opportunity to see many of you. So I would like to just say thank you for the past 10 years for having faith in me as the Dean of Students, as well as Haddonfield Middle School. I will be taking all the lessons that I've learned with me in my new position. And I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Watson from Birchall Drive. I just wanted to come and talk about the health curriculum. I read through a lot of it and I'm against it. I want everyone here to know it. I feel that we're really burdening our children because whether they opt out or not, they go back to class or they go to school the next day and they hear everything. And it's just not great because kids develop at different ages. And what we're doing is it's the sexualization. It goes younger and younger and younger and younger. And at some point, we all need to stand up to the state, to the governor who was ever involved in writing all of this stuff and trying to expose our kids to it because we're exposing them to adult topics, we're confusing them. And I just think that, and I don't know if this is possible because you guys were saying it isn't, but what is the consequence for not going along with it? I mean, that's my main question. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Maines, I live at 7 Roberts Avenue. Just like to say a few words about the sex ed curriculum that will need to be developed by the district in response to the New Jersey standards. I guess you could say these comments are meant to be proactive in order to preempt or avoid greater controversy down the road after the curriculum has been fully developed. The district has flexibility as to how much time they spend teaching the curriculum and how much detail, graphic or otherwise, they present to our children. A few months ago, there was a great deal of participation at the February board meeting, you remember, with the masks. And last week, there was even more participation regarding policy 4240. While 4240 is up there in importance with sex ed, on the surface, I think it's less obvious why it can be problematic. The sex ed curriculum, on the other hand, particularly if it goes at all in the direction of some of what's been proposed in places like Lawrence Township, Cherry Hill, Westfield, among other districts, would bring a great deal more attention and participation, because it can obviously be very detrimental to our children. I just asked the board, the district, to consider using the East Hanover School District model to meet the state standards. This is as reported by NJ.com. East Hanover Superintendent Natalie Bartlett outlined the K-8 district's plans in a letter Tuesday, this was a couple weeks ago, amid an ongoing statewide controversy over the standards. As a district, quote unquote, as a district, we have decided that we will incorporate the new standards into one single classroom period, 35 minutes of instruction for grades 2, 5, and 8 at the end of the year. We also understand that children who run the classes might want to share some information with other children. Therefore, the periods will occur on the last day of school next year, 2023, to minimize the sharing of information. I think that's a reasonable model, can meet the standards, and avoid a lot of the disruption that will occur with the opting out, particularly if it's spread out over the course of the year. It's a reasonable way to go, and I guess you can consider that. Thank you.
I'm Walter Weidenbacher. I live on Center Street. Make some notes. I have a question, and the question is, why do educators think that it's so necessary for them to be the teachers of sexuality and all of those questions that you're talking about? Why do they think that it's their responsibility, and why do they think that why do they not think that it's not their responsibility? Because a lot of parents, yeah, it's a double negative, but a lot of parents think that it is not the responsibility of the teachers to be teaching anything about certain topics, one of them being gender, sex, all of these things that are being pushed. Somehow, I got through puberty. My dad never told me about the birds and the bees, but somehow I did all right. So far I'm happy with how my life went. I had 4 beautiful children, 6 lovely grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, and a very complex family. And so, somehow I got through it. And I didn't need to know what was coming. Now, I want to say something about age. I'm older than most of you. And let me tell you, young folk, you have no idea what's coming. And you know what? You don't have to know it now. When you get there, you'll understand it. I say that because that's how the kids are. When their bodies start changing, they'll figure things out fine. They don't need any teacher to sit down and tell them what they can expect. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Warden, and I live on South Atlantic Avenue, and I came here to talk about COVID, but I guess I have to wait to the end. So I just wanted to say while I was here that I appreciate you bringing up talking about sex and anal sex with our students. I think it's a really good idea. I think, I think young people are doing these things earlier and earlier, and the better educated they are, the more they know about the dangers, about protection. I think it's really important. Also, as I think somebody mentioned, children are molested, they're sexually assaulted, giving them the vocabulary to describe what's happening to them, maybe feeling that they can talk to someone about it because you brought this topic up is really good. And also, I was a high school teacher for a few years in Philadelphia. I'm not anymore, but I had a freshman student come up to me, and he was gay, and he didn't feel like he could talk to anybody about being gay and anal sex. And I think it would be really important if he had that discussion prior to that. So that's how I feel about that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carol Stoner. I'm on Avondale Avenue. I just have a question about, there are three things that we've heard so far about putting sex education at the end, like Chris just said. There's school districts that aren't doing it all. That's true. But my question is, if someone wanted to opt out completely of healthcare, health lessons, how would they go about doing that? So you don't have to answer me now. I'm just saying that not just one particular subject, but if you wanted to opt out of it completely and perhaps do your own curriculum, that would be actually okay with the state. I would want to know that. And my second question is a little bit, it's not quite applicative, but I'm having a hard time with some of the topics being intertwined into other events. So social emotional learning, I found out, is being woven into the 9th grade freshman orientation. So if as a parent, you want to opt your child out of social emotional learning, your child for 9th grade, just beginning school, right, in the high school, has to sit out for the first 4 lessons because it's being intertwined into the 9th grade orientation, social emotional learning. So that person is going to have to sit somewhere, maybe in the library, because it's being intertwined. For instance, in 8th grade, it's also being intertwined. So if you want to opt out of social emotional learning, you're not going to be able to decorate t-shirts because it happens at the same time. So my suggestion is for the people who will be opting out of either one of those two, that they are not intertwined, so it's easier for them to separate so they can still feel like a human being at the end of the day.
Hi, good evening. My name is Liz Lehman. I live on Birchall Drive, and I came here tonight to just voice my opinion and some thoughts around the sexual education curriculum proposals. So my first question is, and similar to a comment previously made, does the school district actually have to put it in, and what would be the penalty for the district to say, you know, we don't think it's the right fit for our community? Is this curriculum going to be confined to just health class, or is this going to be sprinkled in across different subjects, you know, or is it just going to be confined to one teacher? So if you're opting out, you know exactly when this would be occurring, or would you have to be looking, you know, across an entire day for your student? For the opt-out, what does that plan look like? What if the majority of the students in a class are going to opt out? Is it still worthwhile to spend that class time if most of the students are planning on opting out? I ask for transparency. You know, obviously we're heading into the summer months where a lot of this curriculum is going to be developed. So what are the meaningful ways that you plan to solicit feedback from the community and keep us informed? How much advance notice will parents have to be able to review the subject matter that's planning to be discussed? Will we be able to view the materials, have access to what third-party, you know, websites and things are being endorsed or mentioned? And, you know, lastly, I just think it's up to a parent to determine what's age appropriate and at what time in a child's life. And so I really hope that that's taken strongly into consideration by the board. Thank you.
And furthermore, I just want to elaborate a little bit on what I said before, and also what some of the other parents have said. One of the board members said, no parent is looking forward to talk to their child about sex. That's kind of what I was saying about my dad, who evidently didn't want to talk about it. I failed to discuss it with my 2 sons because my dad didn't do it. So, you know, like father, like son. But I agree with that concept. I think that parents aren't, you know, that's an old joke, you know, about, you know, how father hates to talk about the birds and the bees. Did your dad have to talk with you? No, my dad's the chicken. You know, that's an old joke. But, you know, the talk about the birds and the bees and, you know, generation gap. Now, I want to tell you how it appears to me sitting in the audience and listening to these proposals, even though it's common knowledge that adults don't like to talk to their children about sex. It just seems to me that there are some teachers or some forces or some educators or some, I don't know, forces that really do want to talk about sex to children. And I think that a lot of these policies are the expression of those forces who are pushing these projects. And I feel like those forces, I don't know who they are, I feel like they're pushing them on you all. And I feel like that gives you maybe the feeling that you're between a rock and a hard place because you're getting pushback from parents saying, no, we object. And I do believe, or I should say, I don't believe it, it seems that there are forces that are pushing you to really forward these. And just to close, I want to say that I'm very heartened to hear some of the comments that I heard from some of you tonight, that you seem to be warming up to the idea increasingly that you want to listen to what the parents are saying. So, thank you.
Good evening, Mark Artella. I live on Walnut Street. Thank you for all your service, and Mr. Klaus, thank you for your remarks earlier. I'm here to publicly say that my wife and I together strongly oppose the standards being set forth by the governor in the state of New Jersey. We believe that those conversations should be held in the home with the parents, and it's not the government's or any board's decision, or shouldn't be their decision to teach that type of content. And with particular focus on the K through 5th grade ages, there was mention of gender stereotypes this evening and not gender identity discussions, but it's difficult to really comprehend when there's books in the kindergarten grades that are being read by their teacher titled Jack, Not Jackie. And there are others. My wife and I have did a lot of research in the diversity curriculums that have been posted to your credit very transparently online. And there are books that use terms that I didn't even know existed up until reading these books that, again, are intended for K through 5th grades, which is difficult for me to comprehend. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Maria. I live on Wedgewood Lane. I just would like to give my opinion on the topic of the sex education. I feel that this has probably already come to pass long ago, that they made the decision to not have this delve too deep for the protection of all the individuals involved. I don't think that it is the place for a teacher to insert themselves into that part of a child's life or maybe anybody else's life. I mean, these topics are very, very sensitive. And I just feel like it's just going to keep churning over and over. When is it going to end? Where does this stop? This, to some people, is really shocking. When you look at the words on the board and it says anal sex and oral sex, it's really disturbing. I don't know how else to get through to everybody on here that is the majority of the people. Not a small fraction, the majority of the people feel this way. I just don't even know how we are even discussing this. It's disgusting. So, like some of the other individuals, how do you make it stop? This gentleman just said he's little kids. They're reading books that are definitely not age appropriate. So how far does it go? That's what I want to know. how do we make it stop? Because I'm sure there is information out there that at one point in time, this subject has come up and they said, this is the limitations on it. So what do you do when something actually goes wrong? And then one child touches another child inappropriately and they say, well, I learned it in school. Then what are you guys gonna do? Who's gonna protect those children? That's what I wanna know. I think this is really serious, and I think this needs to go back to wherever it came from, and it needs to be reevaluated. Because it does not belong in school. Thank you.
Anyone else before we move on? Thank you all thank you for coming, thank you for your comments, and thank you for listening to the presentations. We appreciate that. All right, we will move on. It's a voting session tonight, so we'll go on to governance. Acceptance of the monthly suspension HIV vandalism violence report as submitted by the Assistant Superintendent. Approval of fire and security drill report for April. Policy approval of regulation 7250 school facility and names, and approval of the 23-24 academic calendar. Can I get a motion? Dave? Second. Meg? Discussion?
So I don't know if this was brought up at the last board meeting. I was surprised, and I'm just seeking understanding. The last that I heard of the calendar, you were gonna move the dates forward and communicate that was the plan, and on this calendar, it doesn't look like.
It was brought up.
We discussed it. So because of the hopefully successful bond referendum, we will probably have to move the calendar, shift the calendar then. I don't want to shift it once and have to reshift it later for construction. So I think it's more prudent to wait and see before we start making a move that we have to undo the next year.
Okay.
I would like to point out to everybody that November break is moving further away because I think that it's the NJDA convention,
Yeah,
right?
it's the 10th and 11th this year.
Yeah, but just as a heads up, because that is not, we go by the NJDA convention, so they move their dates. I feel like that November week is further back. So I always think first week of November, and then.
I'm sure Sean Rich, it's always the end, it's always this week of election, and election's the first Tuesday, so depending on that Tuesday, it falls.
And that's when they had the convention that week, okay. Just want to bring it to people's attention, if you were like me, and I thought there was an error.
In terms of school and facility names, I think last time there was some chatter about, are we planning to rename any of the schools? I'm not aware of any plans to rename any of the schools. It just seemed to me like it was a prudent update of a policy for, should we get new facilities? Should there be a new school if the long-range facility plan is successful? That we're laying out what these things would be.
Well, and I also think it protects against spot exuberance, right? You know, it lays out a framework and a step-by-step process where you would go around renaming instead of just an event happens, you blam on it and say, of course. This gives you that pause, that reflection, to say, yeah, is it really, it builds in community input, it sets time limits and minimum time limits for certain things. So, and we have two buildings that don't have names. So there are opportunities for naming even now, not renaming, actual names. So this gives thoughtful framework for future boards to follow.
So, I mean, I'll tell you that is the thing that concerns me. When we first started talking about this regulation, I just want to point out that we don't approve a regulation. This is for acknowledgement. We don't get to vote on this. This is from the district. But my understanding of it was you know, if Coca-Cola wanted to give us $50 million, would we name the school the Coca-Cola Elementary School?
Just
We'll
like-
have a discussion on it. But that's the whole point, yeah, we would have to
And that was my
Nobody
perception.
can say no, nobody can say yes, we have to talk about it.
So that was my perception, why we were even talking about that, because it was like, well, we don't have any guidance for that. And quite honestly, when I saw the renaming, because in my mind, it was for naming, new wings, new buildings. I never considered when I read through this that we would rename any of our elementary schools, never considered it. And do I think that this board or this administration would do it? I don't, but Dave, to what you just said, I think that when there's policy and there's regulation, it is not for just the here and now, we're paving a way for the future. I personally don't love paving the way of the future to rename the elementary schools. That's just my 2 cents. There's a board, that's why there's 9 of us.
And you know what, if I, just to piggyback on what you said, I think it's good to have these parameters as a framework for future discussions when anything comes up. But 100%, just because we approve these policies, they're not set in stone. It's what the prior boards have decided and it's the framework. So if something comes up in the future that the current board, that the future board doesn't like, you can change it. So I have to stress that because sometimes people feel like that's our policy and we have to stick to it. And we don't. I mean, we shouldn't approve something and then change it a month later because then we didn't really give it good thought when we approved it. But, you know.
Never has to be 2 months.
It's important.
Policy can change without 2 months.
Yeah. I did have a question, and I'm on the policy committee meeting, but I couldn't make the last one. Gino, I don't know if you recall this, but I know you're always so knowledgeable. The 5-year waiting period, is that a standard that a lot of districts use, or was there any discussion like 5 years versus 10 years versus something else, or how did we come up with the 5 years?
So we came to that number based on the research we did in creating that regulation, which was primarily based on other public schools that have naming policies. Many do not, and colleges and universities, almost all of which do. And 5 seemed to be the number that that came up most often. And in our review and policy seemed to be a good number to avoid, what was
The exuberance.
the exuberance behind, hey, we want to name it after this individual because they meant so much to our community. And then having a pause before that, 5 years seemed like a reasonable amount of time. So it's not steeped in quantitative research necessarily, but we found that was a good point.
I think it's good to have a pause. I just didn't know why 5 years versus
Yeah.
7 versus 10 versus.
That's the number that came out most recently.
I think we've named things recently, in the recent past, whether they're official or not. The Sarah Target Garden, the Baker Track.
To your point, Linda, should we maybe change the way it's listed on the agenda, that it's not a policy approval, but that it's a policy acknowledgement or board acknowledgement of policy?
Yeah, and I did talk about, I mentioned that last week, I just have not
Okay.
You've been a little busy,
done my
right?
research on it. Yeah, so I'll
Okay.
make sure it's
Thank you.
on my to-do list.
But, and I have to reopen it, the other thing that's interesting, right, is I think it said in there that the person must be deceased.
That's common in college gift agreements because you don't want to name something after someone and then they turn around and do something heinous the next day.
That makes sense.
That was a topic, we had done a
I'm fine
presentation
with
several
it.
years ago on this topic, and that was one of the reasons why.
That's
Because
a
it's a
sound
good insurance policy against.
Because we have in recent past named things after people who are still, living, and it's.
Oh, yes.
I think that's a valid point. It's a little bit of a shame that when somebody's given so much over many, many years, it's nice that they know that they were appreciated while they're still alive, but.
I see it as a
get
risk,
both
I see
sides.
it as a
I'm not arguing.
conservative risk management stipulation to have it in there.
And you're ripping down your sign when you do something. That's Facebook.
I worked in an office that was named after somebody who went to jail about a year after I started sitting in there. because
Well, I think
it happens.
we called it the Enron rule, like.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we call it the Milken Rule.
It's still the name.
It
They
is
never
still the
changed it.
name. Well, because you can't. That's why you don't do it in the first place.
Okay, any other comments before we vote? Mike, do you want to call roll?
Ms. Hollingworth,
Approve.
Ms. Paoli,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Vice President Hoagardle,
Yes, but abstain on C.
Ms. Benecki,
Yes.
Dr. Brown,
Yes.
and President Crooked.
Yes. Okay, curriculum and special education, approval of field trips, conferences, travel, and overnight field trips. Resolution between Hilltop Preparatory School and the Haddonfield Board of Ed, and approval for a Rowan University student to complete an internship for a school psychologist, Dr. Loren. Did I miss one?
I said so moved.
Oh, okay. Oh, boy, you're fast, Heather. Heather is, and
Second.
Steph? Any discussion?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mike, can you call roll?
Ms. Paoli,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Vice President Hoagardle,
Yes.
Ms. Benecki,
Yes.
Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth,
Yes.
President Crooked.
Yes, but abstain on C. Okay, personnel. Approval of new personnel transfers, salary upgrades, mentoring, extracurricular coaching, leave of absence of resignations. Approval of the 22-23 contract for Dr. Priolo as Assistant Superintendent. Approval of employees to provide counseling services at a per diem rate this summer. Approval to abolish the Chief Academic Officer position as of July 1st. Approval to reinstate salary increments for several employees. Resolution to reduce the FTE for high school Latin position from 1 to 0.6. Approval to abolish the 0.4 FTE high school German position as of July 1st. Approved Christina Nealio for extended school year program. Approve Elliot Ryan for the 22 Learning Acceleration Program. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Linda and Meg. Discussion?
I just want to mention, Dr. Murray, we're thankful for you and for the, it's sad I know we discussed it in the past and the reasons why, for the Latin and German decrease, but it's a sad thing to do, even if it's great.
I was going to say the same thing. Colleen, you've done a wonderful job. We really appreciate you. We just got caught up in something with organization and finances that's sad. I think that's the right word. And we appreciate everything you've done. You're a hard worker. You'll be missed. I want to say that to you. That's sincere.
And we wish you the best. Dr. Murray was one of the people I worked closest with when I first came on the board and curriculum department and our curriculum committee. And I was always impressed by your thorough research and your eagerness to collect data and really examine it and bring people in for consensus and discussion on issues that would really impact the district. And so we're really grateful for all that you've done, and we're going to miss you. So thank you so much, and I'll personally miss you as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, honestly, you're the first curriculum person I interacted with on this board that cared about the middle, right? So there's so much effort that we all put in for the top end and in the bottom end of our students. If you think about it on a curve, and your data said no, pay attention to the middle too, and you just stuck to your guns on that, and I think the whole district's better for it.
You've brought a lot, Colleen, so thank you for so many contributions from your presentations. And I think the one thing that you might have single-handedly influenced the way everything was run was the way you link documents inside of documents inside of, and it may not, but like honestly, it just allows people to read things at a higher level and get the gist of it, but also go into the detail. Like that's just a huge, it may seem minor, but it really is a very beneficial part of the culture that you changed, but.
And you have footnotes in your board updates. Super impressive.
Guys, I'm gonna start crying. Thank you.
Let's switch subjects.
I'm sorry. So two other things on the personnel folder.
Yes.
She snuck out.
I know, I just.
Tozo, we want to say goodbye, that's sad, because she's done a wonderful job, she was really missed. And we announced it last week, but Hamisi Tarrant is our new, middle school principal. And Dave took the same group as Tracy, right? Started off as a dean of students, and then a couple of years after the principal. We say hello, Hamisi, or we get to know you better. We all know pretty well.
I just want to thank everyone once again for having me be a part of this community. I started Dean Students 3 years ago, and now I move up to the middle school. My goal is kind of keep things rolling. I think we had great leadership in place with Ms. Matozo. I kind of want to continue some of the great work she's been doing. Keep moving forward, keep growing. So thank you.
You know, one of the things that Tracy said during the PTA meeting, and she talked about how you both took the same path, but she talked about being the dean of students here, understanding what goes on in the high school, and then moving down into the middle school so that you have that knowledge of what's going to come ahead for those kids. Just gives you a really great perspective, and I thought that's going to be helpful. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I know Tracy's not here, but I feel like I would still like to say what I was going to say. Because maybe she'll watch the video or if someone look at the clip and see what.
It's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, okay.
9 o'clock.
2 hours in. Yeah, I think, Tracy has been a great leader in the middle school. I was so fortunate to have my kids have her. Fun fact of Tracy was her mother was my room parent in elementary school. I went to school with her brother. And I just think she did such a great job leading middle schoolers. And it's a hard age to lead. And I think that during these times, it's been so tumultuous for them. And I think she's done a really good job. And Hamisi, I'm so excited that you're going to be coming in because I think you're going to just be moving things even more forward. So we're very lucky to have you.
And Jamie, if I just have to, in case Tracy watches it as well, but I mean, everybody comes to the table with different, strengths and different personality traits. And the one thing that I always think of when I think of Tracy is that there would be different issues throughout the years that would get parents upset or concerned about something. And Tracy always listened. And it was always like, how can I help? And what she did that is a skill set of hers is let me try to see it from their perspective. And I think by doing that, she ended up getting allies that would listen to her, listen to her recommendation, and she was able to find solutions that often worked for a larger amount of the population. And so it was just something that I always appreciated in her. And if I can add one other comment, I know Francine Silverman worked for a long time for the child study team. And so I don't know when she started, but I know that I've seen her name around for many years. So I just hate for somebody to leave without being recognized for their long-term contributions. She was a big part of helping that team function well.
I want to echo that. So as a former child study team director, one of Francine's core jobs was to schedule all of the child study team meetings. That may not mean much to some people. That's about 1,400 meetings annually that are conducted all 12 months throughout the year. There's no down period for the child study team. There's not a single month where meetings aren't scheduled. And it's not like scheduling a meeting with a director and a parent. It's a general education teacher, it's a special education teacher, it's a speech and language therapist, it's a behavior specialist, and accommodating parent schedules. And we are actually one of the few school districts that will, with some limitations, honor parent requests for rescheduling of particular meetings, sometimes at the last minute. And Francine has always done that with grace and with care, and she is someone that we will miss, and I really enjoyed my time working with her, both as the Tatum principal when she was a volunteer in the library, and as a child studies team secretary.
Can I ask you a question about a specific extracurricular activity, a stipend? Girls on the Run, Tatum? What is that? Why is it so expensive?
Really expensive, but that is actually an after-school running club.
Oh.
They're actually running.
Okay.
It's part of a national curriculum that's
Really good. My fifth grader is part of it. They're running a 5K in the beginning of June. That's what they train for. Yeah, it seems like a nice introduction to track and cross country. Like gives them a flavor before.
Sure.
Where's the number?
It's under B.
415.
It's,
Have you jumped to 4?
No.
it's under extracurricular activity revised.
415.
415.
Yeah.
They I don't know how many weeks the program runs, but it does run for several weeks, and it's at least an hour.
It's not new either.
weeks, several times a week.
Yeah.
Unless it stopped for COVID, it's not new. I mean, my kids.
Okay, anything else on there? Okay. Mike, can you call a roll?
Mr. Seidel.
Yes.
Vice President Hogerl.
Yes.
Ms. Benecki.
Yes.
Dr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth.
Yes.
Ms. Paoli.
Yes.
President Crooked.
Yes. Okay, approval of business and finance recommendations, approval of the new contract with Advocate. I think I'm gonna need reading glasses. Approve the addendum to the contract with NutriServe. Approve the renewal of the contract with Computer Solutions for software support. Approve the renewal of the contract with Alphabest. Approval of the tax payments for Haddonfield Borough and Tavistock Borough. Approval of tuition reimbursements. Approval of more tuition reimbursements. Approval to purchase a mental wellness platform, Calm for Business. Approval to share the cost in an athletic field study with the borough, which would be not to exceed $5,000. Approval to purchase a web-based navigation system to assist its school district clients and the district's students and parents in locating and connecting mental health treatment. Approve the awarding of the RFP for the school physician to Inspira Health Network. Approve the awarding of the RFP for substitute staffing. Approve the awarding of the RFP for construction manager of record. Approve the awarding of the RFP for legal services. Accept the donation of water bottle filling station or fountain for Tatum PTA. Payment of bills, budget transfers, board secretary's report, and the cash summary report. No motion?
Motion.
Linda?
Second.
Steph? Comments?
I talked about this last week with Dr. Crillo at the end of the meeting. I'm really excited to see that we're partnering with Care Solace. I remember a bunch of parents mentioning at the mask meeting in February that they're having difficulty accessing mental health providers for their children, and I think it's just a great resource to provide a warm handoff for someone who's in crisis or to help connect parents with resources that they need for their children. And so I'm just really glad to see that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're gonna explain some RFP stuff for us now?
On the agenda, there's the four approvals for requests for proposals for 4 different professional services: school physician, substitute staffing, construction manager of record, and the special education aspect of legal. What that process entails is, a couple months ago, we actually approved to solicit those requests for proposals. And the documents itself, what we solicit is pretty extensive, has a lot of statutory and compliance documentation that we're required to have with vendors that do these professional services. But the selection criteria is whatever we want, but we have it the same across the board. We grade each vendor on qualifications of staff, their firm experience, their apparent ability to perform services, the quality of the submission itself, and of course, cost. And then on a weighted scale, we grade each of those vendors and come up with a recommendation for the board to approve for those services. Also, with why these 4 services, there's statutory, there is no set frequency you're supposed to go out to solicit these requests for proposals. But what I do as the qualified purchasing agent, I put everything on a schedule. So these 4, actually 3 of them were on a schedule to be up this year. There's one that is sort of new to us because we haven't used that service in a while, which is construction manager of record, and we're doing a lot of long-range facilities planning now. But there are some that actually do have a requirement in the procurement process that are every 5 years. One is actually on the agenda as we're approving the addendum to their original contract, food service. That's every 5 years. So it's custodial management services. So next year we'll be back here again, right, at the same time next year, approving an RFP for food service management company. As far as who submitted and how many we got, so I'll go through each one with you right now. So for school physician, we're recommending Inspira, who's talking to Tika. Her firm was the only one that submitted for that one, but we've worked with her a lot. We like working with her, so there's no issues there. Same thing for substitute staffing, ESS Northeast. We've been working with them. There was another company, EduStaff. They submitted a proposal too. We're recommending to stay with ESS. Construction.
Can I ask a question on that? Just wondering about the price. Are we paying for them to find us substitutes, or are we paying the substitute? Or does that include the cost of substitutes?
So they manage providing subs for us. We pay them, and they in turn pay the sub.
Oh, okay. So that number just seems so high. That number includes.
No, one sub is not getting that much money.
Okay. Well, I mean, like you're the company, not. So yeah, that's not their service. That includes the cost of substitutes. Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that.
On
Okay.
one fiscal basis.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Construction manager of record, we had two submissions for construction manager of record. We're recommending new road construction, and then for legal services, this is an interesting one. We have 2 firms on here as a recommendation because we like using Cape Art Statute for certain cases and Park McKay for other cases, and they were the only 2 that submitted, and that's keeping the status quo of what we're doing right now anyway. So no changes there either. Oh, yes, he does.
The construction manager position would be like helping figure out how to do these bathrooms this summer, or next summer, right? Like it can help us think about how to minimize disruption and figure out timing. Is that the idea behind
Of course they could.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why it's construction manager of record, not for project
Right,
A
specific
or
project,
project
it can help
B.
planning and
So
stuff.
they're there at our disposal to ask their opinion on it.
Yeah.
Mike, can you call roll?
Vice President Hooger,
Yes.
Ms. Benecki,
Yes.
Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth,
Yes.
Ms. Paoli,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
President Crooked.
Yes. Approval of the following minutes, the regular meeting from April 14th, executive session from April 14th, regular meeting from April 28th, and executive session from April 28th. Motion? Dave? Steph? I think Steph, if we were keeping a tally. You got.
We're already in like the longest meeting ever.
I know, we're moving things along. Okay, discussion on those? No? Mike, can you call roll?
Ms. Benecki?
Yes.
Dr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Hollingworth?
Yes.
Ms. Paoli?
Yes.
Mr. Seidel?
Yes.
Vice President Hoagirtle?
Yes, but abstain on C and D.
President Brickett?
Yes. Okay, this time we can take public comment on non-agenda items.
Sorry, I have a 5-month-old at home. My name is Dr. Lisa Ward and I live on South Atlantic Avenue. I'm here tonight because I want to talk about the COVID policy, particularly for the preschoolers. As of now, Cambria County is considered a high transmission area. And in addition to that, the state health guidelines and the CDC are recommending that everybody mask indoors and that that schools put in effect mask mandates again. I feel particularly strongly about this for the preschoolers who cannot be vaccinated. I felt strongly about it when they took away the mask mandate for the preschoolers who can't be vaccinated. To me, that's you're taking away their only line of defense. It was not even 2 weeks into the preschoolers no longer being masked when there was an outbreak in both preschool classrooms. It had to be briefly shut down. So I would like the mask mandate to be back in effect in the school in general, but especially for the preschool classes that cannot be vaccinated. And I know it's your choice, and my daughter does wear a KF94 to school every day, but I'm sure you also realize that she's protecting others more so than she's being protected by doing it. So when you wear the mask, you're protecting others, then you are being protected yourself. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I have a problem with is the return to school policy. So the way that it states, and I know it's based on CDC guidelines, is the first 5 days the person has to isolate, and then the second 5 days they're supposed to wear a high quality medical grade mask. So we're talking K95, KF94. After the first outbreak, the students that had COVID came back wearing cloth masks. Research has shown, and this is not my words, but a virologist, that in the face of Omicron, cloth masks are basically decorative facial coverings. They really don't do anything to prevent the transmission of Omicron. So for students that are still within the infectious period of COVID to be coming back to class, infectious with COVID, with students that are unvaccinated, wearing a cloth mask, it's not really helpful. And then there was another outbreak in the preschool class these past 2 weeks. And the other thing is this research was based on adults who were vaccinated. That's what that CDC policy is based on. They have no idea how long unvaccinated toddlers are infectious for. It could be longer, it could be shorter, but we don't know. And so in the last little outbreak, and the other thing that the CDC policy is based on is perfect mask wearing is what it says. Well, okay, I know most of my colleagues can't do perfect mask wearing. So you're asking 3 to 5-year-olds to be doing perfect mask wearing. And, I watched this girl that I knew was on day 6 of her COVID infection, run in with the mask below her nose and come out with it below her chin. So basically my daughter spent the afternoon with a child infectious with COVID, possibly not wearing a mask. And I felt like I had to keep her home then for the rest of the week. So that's my feeling, and I just wanted to let it know how strongly I felt about the COVID policy in the preschool classroom. Thank you.
Ed Bow, Grove Street. Hate to be the person that extends the meeting anyway. The one thing that I wanted to talk about was I heard construction talk going on. And I know there's obviously concerns about inflation. Currently, I'm a business owner of a construction company. The material prices right now have outpaced inflation because supply and demand is still a huge issue. If there is the ability, and I know you kind of mentioned that there might be time to wait, construction costs ebb and flow with the economy. And right now, everybody's busy and they can't get things done. If you wait until, I shouldn't be saying this probably, but if you wait until the economy drops, you can save a significant portion of that. That's my 2 cents on that. And then my 2 cents on the incident, which I did not know even existed until the meeting. Growing up here and having kids that are coming here, I graduated in 06. I don't really know from the news what happened before 06. I was a kid and I just went to school. After 06, there does seem to be an uptick in these issues. Hopefully, we can get this behind us as a town. Tired of hearing about things that happen in the news. And I think the one way to do it, which I think Mr. Klaus was mentioning, is fundamentally, I think you have to get the leaders of the sports teams to buy in. That seems to be where most of the trouble comes from, is the sports teams. And I think if you get the leaders of the sports teams, maybe a freshman to senior, do some sort of leadership training with the leaders. And that way, when freshmen show up, they have a senior who outweighs them significantly, which is how men, let's be honest, that's how we act in line, right? You have a senior who outweighs them, telling them what to do and what the standard is, and the fact that they represent not just themselves, people who have gone here, and then also at the same time, people who follow them. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Maria Costa, Wedgewood Lane. I just wanted to also comment on the same incident. I know that you felt really strongly about this incident and being responsible. So I just have some suggestions. I feel that maybe we're getting a little bit far away from just basic common courtesy, manners, etiquette. I think all of these are really important, to raise really good individuals. We're making humans here. We're trying to put out the best that we can put out. And I feel that we've lost our way when it comes to ladies and gentlemen, whether they're true ladies or true gentlemen, it doesn't really matter because you need to learn how to act accordingly to all situations and be well prepared for that. And I think that maybe these children are not well prepared. They have no go-to. So I don't know if it's something that could go all the way across the board, if it's something that the teachers could even involve themselves in and start practicing more manners and common courtesy in the classroom. I don't know if this would be helpful, but I think when you're raised in a household that practices that as well, it's like a win-win. So the other suggestion is that I don't know what the incident was about. I just heard something about a swastika. So I know that you're trying to really focus on equity. And I think that if you take two communities and put them together and have them work together, maybe as like a charity type of work, this might be helpful to the students because they will then learn how to work well with others, contribute to their community, to society, as a group, as an individual, how to carry themselves. That all kind of ties into that. So I think if you keep giving these kids things to practice on, to be better humans, better individuals, I think you're going to get maybe the result you might be looking for. But it all does stem from the examples of the teachers, other, like he was mentioning, the older students. I think it all comes into play. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one last comment. I don't know if anybody else is coming
Do you
up.
want to wait to close public comment and items for future consideration?
Sure.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to items for future consideration by the board or thoughts with Heather.
I just wanted to share this with you. I believe when you talked earlier, you mentioned, providing more training for coaches and players and everyone. And obviously, sports is a great place to start, but I just wanted to throw out there as well, any, adult leadership or other teams, right? Something could happen in drama or debate
I
or.
was thinking the same
No,
thing, marching
I just want-
band, they're all ambassadors anytime they're leaving our
That's why it's
grounds.
an ambassador, and that's why it would be more for.
I like
But the fact of the matter is the high frequency in athletics. And,
Yeah.
and as a guy who coached forever and wrestled at a very high level, I hate saying that because it feels like I'm targeting athletes with bad by nature, and that's not the point. The case is that more frequently they are out in the world, they're out away from our school, interacting with others more often than others.
Yeah.
So, but I agree, anyone who is, all of our students are ambassadors. I think I really would like to start thinking of it that way. So is that, and then all the training, you're right, every single
If
extracurricular.
you're gonna invite somebody to come speak, why not, instead of having 30 people there, have 40 and have the other people
I
come? Or
understand.
if we're gonna pass out a little reference document for what they need to do and be aware of or share with their team,
Realize that.
whatever you end up
realize-
doing.
Right, yeah, but we will expand them. But realize, when we say athletics, we're talking 88% of the kids.
Yeah.
Right, and then if you throw in just other curriculums, we're like 92%. So we're pretty close to what we're doing there. I agree with you.
I'm with you, we just
Yeah.
made so many strides and then things keep happening. I don't wanna make strides in this one area and then boom, it hits in another area.
Yeah, I
I just
understand. That's a
wanna
good point.
cover all our bases.
To that end, check it, and I'm sorry, if we'll try not to extend the meeting that much longer. I really appreciated the way that you said that, we don't wanna isolate these kids, we don't wanna make excuses for them, but we don't wanna isolate them. No one ever improved their behavior by being sent to a corner. And I think that was an important point, and I appreciate
That's
that.
something we learn, we need to be better at. You'll get more improvement through showing them proud and love than you will. You need a hug.
Yeah,
I
I mean, they need correction, but not isolation.
Redirection to the hug helps too, yes.
That's it.
Okay, well, that's it. All right, well, thank you everyone for a very good meeting. Motion to adjourn. Wow. Eager. Meeting adjourned.
This is not.
Yeah.